Coming up, Durant is scratched in his son's home debut, and the Celtics get back on track. This is Locked On Game to Game NBA.
Every game, every team, every angle. Locked On Game to Game, your team every day.
Welcome back. You are listening to Locked On Game to Game NBA. Local experts joining us to go over the biggest stories on the hardwood. I'm your host, Kainani Stevens. Thank you for making Locked On your first listen every single weekday. Suns fans will have to wait a little bit longer to see KD in action at home after he was scrapped just before the game when he rolled his ankle in pregame shoot-around. Devin Booker stepping up, though, willing his team to a win over OKC. Locked On Suns is in with more.
Suns get some bad news pregame as Kevin Durant tweaks a left ankle, late scratch in what was supposed to be his home debut, and yet the Suns come out with the victory anyway over the Oklahoma City Thunder. Shorthanded themselves, no Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, no Jalen Williams. Brendan Clean here coming to you live after that victory here at Footprint Center. Devin Booker picking up the slack where Durant was not able to with that left ankle sprain. Booker scoring 40, doing his thing, looking every bit like the player he had been with Durant the past 3 games. Just efficient, only missed 6 shots, 6 of 10 from deep. Unreal performance, and that was really all that it took. The Suns had a strong shooting performance from deep. They did let the Thunder shoot pretty well themselves, but shorthanded Thunder, the Suns just clinical. That's what the result's going to be. For more on these Suns, listen to Locked On Suns wherever you get podcasts.
The Clippers took care of business against the Raptors last night. Locked On Clippers goes over the full team effort that led to the win.
Clippers make it 2 in a row. I'm Darian Vaziri, but Locked On Clippers coming to you after the final buzzer of the Clippers and Raptors. The second straight win for the Clippers. Kawhi Leonard was awesome with another double-double, a poster dunk on Jakob Poeltl in the third quarter. Paul George had 10 points in the third, and everyone played much better defense tonight for the Clippers. From Marcus Morris to Russell Westbrook, they fought over screens, their rotations were sharp, and they showed that besides Ty Lue, not playing certain guys like Terrence Mann, who was incredible tonight, it's really the defensive effort from the players that makes all the difference first before we even talk about any personnel changes. Yes, the Raptors missed some shots, but the Clipper defense was the key to this win. It propelled some good transition offense. Eric Gordon, I thought, was amazing. Ivica Zubac, 17 points, 8 rebounds. Great win. That's 2 in a row, building off the momentum they got from the Memphis game. I'm Darian Vaziri. You can catch more on Locked On Clippers.
The Mavs laid an egg against the New Orleans team that hasn't been able to buy a win lately. Locked On Mavs and Locked On Pelicans give us the details from both sides of this one.
The Dallas Mavericks take a bad loss that just looks worse the more that you look at it. Nick Angstead from the Locked On Mavericks podcast here. The Dallas Mavericks get out to a good run here, 14-6 to start the game against a shorthanded Pelicans team. And then Luka Doncic gets his 15th tech after taunting a Pelicans player after a layup. Just an awful situation. Luka Doncic gets the technical, and then since that play, it just went all the way downhill. This Dallas Mavericks team fell apart at that moment. Luka Doncic was dealing with a thigh injury. He's been dealing with a thigh injury for a little while now, and it just was getting worse in this game. You could tell in the second quarter, he just didn't have it. His effort was absolutely abysmal during this game, and some of it was because of this injury. Luka Doncic ends up not coming back into this game at the end of the third quarter and ends up not coming back into this game. Dallas Mavericks in the fourth quarter, though, bomb a bunch of threes, hit 10 threes in the fourth quarter, almost make a comeback, but it's just not enough. This team just cannot play that type of offense for 3 quarters and expect to win at all at this point.
That was the type of performance from the Pelicans that gives you hope for the future, but can they continue it? I'm Jake Madison, host of Locked On Pelicans. Just when the season looks lost, the Pelicans pull you right back in with a solid win over the Dallas Mavericks. With Brandon Ingram leaving the game with an injury, it was CJ McCollum, the Pelicans' lone star standing, that led the way to the win. With momentum going towards Dallas, CJ scored 16 straight points for the Pelicans in the fourth quarter, including going 4 of 4 from deep on some ridiculous shots, as he straight up took over the game. The Pelicans have talked about accountability recently, and CJ McCollum, who has struggled since the All-Star break, has said he needs to be better, and he finally delivered in a much-needed win. Combine that with the defense stifling Luka Doncic, who left early, and Kyrie Irving for 3 quarters, it shows you why many viewed this Pelicans team as a top 4 team in the West. They're going to be without Zion for at least 2 more weeks, and let's see if they can carry the momentum going forward.
Celtics were on a losing skid this week after a couple of overtime heartbreakers earlier on in the week, but they got back on track against Portland on Wednesday Wednesday night. Locked On Celtics is checking in postgame from Boston.
Boston Celtics got hot early. Jayson Tatum dropped 30, and they get a rare opportunity to rest. I'm John Corrales here at the TD Garden, where the Celtics get a very easy 115-93 win over the Blazers, who were just horrible. I'm sorry, the Blazers had maybe their worst game of the season in this one. And the Celtics jumped all over them early in the first quarter. In fact, the Celtics had good starts to each half, which set the tone here. And late in the third, Jayson Tatum's 3 3-pointers were part of a game-changing run. When the Portland Trailblazers finally made a little bit of a push and cut a lead to 13, Tatum hit those threes and closed the door. The most important stat of the night here, Tatum plays 31 minutes. Jaylen Brown, who had played 92 minutes in the last 2 games combined, just 25. So very important rest for those guys as they head out on now a 6-game road trip.
Coming up, the Hawks outlast the Wizards for the win. This is Locked On Game to Game NBA. This edition of Locked On Game to Game is brought to you by BetterHelp. You can get online therapy and give it a try at BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA and get on your way to being your best self. Because when you're at your best, you can do a ton of great things. Sometimes life gets in the way of that. And of course, therapy is always a helpful way to kind of get some outside perspective. I've used therapy to get an opinion that isn't involved in what I'm thinking in my head, so helps me work on myself, and I feel like it really gives me an outlet to talk about things that maybe you're not comfortable talking with people in your life about. So if you want to live a more empowered life, therapy can get you there. You visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOn today. You'll get 10% off of your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. Welcome back to Locked On Game to Game NBA. I'm your host, Kainani Stevens. Thank you once again for making Locked On your first listen every weekday. The Cavaliers grinded things out in Miami for an important victory over the Heat. Locked On Cavs gives you all of the information you need to know.
Chris Manning here, Locked On Cavs. A very playoff-y win for the Cleveland Cavaliers against the Miami Heat on Wednesday night. They're in South Beach, first of 2 games there. It was grimy. You had to deal with some Jimmy Butler drawing fouls. You had to deal with some adversity and weird foul calls and bad turnovers, and not even a great Donovan Mitchell night. But the Cavs got a win. They picked up a dub. They get 2.5 games up on the Knicks for the 4 seed. Dub. And they just handled everything. They had a big advantage in points off of turnovers, taking advantage of a Heat team that committed more turnovers and was just a little less careful with the ball. This is a big, big win for a Cavs team that has to go through some stuff like this. Also notable, Dean Wade out of the rotation, Lamar Stevens in after his big Celtics performance. This guy and I are going to break it all down on Locked On Cavs. Get that wherever you get your podcasts.
A career night for Kristaps Porzingis with 43 points, but it was not enough for them to overtake the Atlanta Hawks. Locked On Hawks and Locked On Wizards are in to go over everything for you post-game.
Hello, friends. My name is Brad Rowland, and the Atlanta Hawks get a much-needed road win on this Wednesday evening, snapping a 5-game road losing streak with a 122-120 victory in Washington, D.C. over the Wizards. The Hawks dug a 15-point hole in the third quarter of this game, but from there it was all Hawks. A memorable performance from Trae Young in this one, 28 points, 10 assists, and maybe one of the best defensive games of his career, to be honest with you. And from there, the Hawks shot the ball extremely well throughout this contest. A very good offensive performance on the whole for Atlanta. John Collins bounces back with 4 threes. Trae Young, obviously the bench was fantastic. Jalen Johnson made a huge impact in the second half during that comeback win, and the Hawks now even the score with the Wizards for the season 1-1, and a rematch awaits on Friday in Washington. We'll have a full breakdown of this game and more on Locked On Hawks podcast.
What's good, NBA fans? Unfortunately, the Washington Wizards lose a huge game to the Atlanta Hawks at home, 122-120. The Wizards finished the game with 20 turnovers. And it hurt down the stretch. Bradley Beal with a travel down the stretch. Bradley Beal with a missed, a tough layup attempt in transition, but Denny Avdia had the basketball in his hands and somehow lost the basketball. Kristaps Porzingis, unfortunately, the Wizards wasted a 43-point effort for Kristaps Porzingis. Kristaps Porzingis had a career night with 7 3-pointers, 7 for 10 from the three-point line, which is ridiculous. Ridiculous shooting. The solid three did show up tonight. 25 points from Kyle Kuzma, 24 points from Bradley Beal, Corey Kispert with 10 points, but questionable lineups by Wes Unseld Jr. to start out that fourth quarter. The Wizards had a 15-point lead. The Wizards lead the league in losing leads of 15 points or more. They have lost a lead of 15 points or more 7 times this year, and they lead the league in that. Thank you guys for listening. Hail to the Wizards. Peace.
That will do it for this edition of Locked On Game to Game NBA. Thank you for making Locked On your first listen every weekday. Make sure that you subscribe to Locked On NBA and, of course, your favorite team's Locked On podcast on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts from. I'm Kainani Stevens. This has been Locked On Game to Game.